All right, let's talk about kinesiology from a big picture perspective. So kinesiology is the scientific study of human movement. And I always think that people get involved with kinesiology because, well, of a variety of reasons. But almost every reason leads back to being interested in human performance. So, for example, maybe you found kinesiology because you participated in high school sports or some type of sport during high school that led you to want to find out more about how to do that sport better, whether that's by learning a better skill or how to learn better, whether it's to train to be better in the sport, or maybe you got injured and you were interested in how to prevent an injury in the future or how to rehab from the injury. Or maybe you know someone who had to enter a cardiac rehab program. They maybe had a heart issue that had some surgery, and then they had to go into a fitness program specific to cardiac patients. And you found that interesting, and that took you down the path of kinesiology. There's a wide range of reasons why we get involved with um, kinesiology, and but the common aspect of all this is we're all interested in human performance, how well we do something. Sometimes that how well is related to sports specifically. I want to be able to run a 5K faster or a marathon faster. Maybe I want to be able to kick a ball further or throw a ball more accurately. Um, or maybe it has to do with rehab. How do I prevent an injury? How do I rehab someone from a particular injury, or to minimize the risk of that injury from even happening in the first place? Or like in cardiac rehab, maybe it is how do you train someone who has a heart condition that that would benefit from exercise? What type of principles do you need to follow for that? All those are performance related, even cardiac rehab, because when I worked at cardiac rehab, many of the performance goals for the people entering the program were they wanted to be able to walk in the mall. They wanted to be able to drive their car. So they needed to have a certain level of strength to be able to drive their car. Those are performance related, how well we do something. So at the end of the day, we're all interested in how well we do something. We just come at this from different pathways. So from a very basic perspective, how well we do a performance is nothing more than a bunch of movements. Movements are flexions, extensions, rotations, internal rotation, external rotation, abduction, adduction, what have you. Those are all movements. And you put those movements together in a particular way and you have a performance. All right. Now, what's the basic description of a movement? Well, to describe a movement, we end up using terms like displacement in time. So displacement is a change in position and over some time period. Well, we have a class, and likewise with class for movements, we have a class specific about um, terminology that we use to describe movement. So you have anatomical kinesiology, where you learn all those movements. To learn about the displacements in time, we have the branch of mechanics called kinematics, and you learn about this in undergraduate biomechanics. And you learn about the relationships between position, velocity, and acceleration, both in the linear world and an angular world. Well, you have those displacements in time. We put a name to those displacements in times in terms of human movement, an extension, a flexion, and we put all those movements together and we have a performance. All right, so what causes something to change position in some time period? Well, that's going to be some type of force, and a force is a push or a pull that tends to cause movement. And a force will cause an object, maybe it's the forearm, to displace in some time period. And maybe we call that forearm movement, maybe we call that elbow extension. And maybe we combine that elbow extension with shoulder movement. And maybe we combine that extension and shoulder movement, and we have some type of sport performance, whether it's throwing something or doing some type of target type of movement. So in biomechanics, you also learn about forces in the branch of mechanics called kinetics, the study of forces causing movement. And you learn Newton's laws of motion, law of inertia, law of acceleration, law of action reaction. And forces come external to the body, gravity, someone pushing on you, the ground pushing on you, buoyancy force pushing up on you, drag force pushing against you. Those are all external forces. We're also probably more interested in forces caused by the human. So muscle forces. Now, yes, there's joint forces, there's bone-on-bone forces, there's ligament forces, there's tendon, what have you. I'm just being lazy and I'm just putting muscles here. So muscles do all sorts of things, and we study how well muscles generate force, and we see how that force is related to how fast we're asking the muscle to contract. So the force velocity relationship. We also study the influence of how long a muscle is and how much tension it can generate or how much force it can generate. So we study things like the length tension relationship of muscle contraction. We also look at energy systems, how well muscles convert or transform chemical energy to mechanical energy to generate a pulling force on the tendon that pulls on the bone that causes a displacement in time period that causes some movement, elbow extension, elbow flexion, what have you. And that movement ends up being part of a human performance. So we look at energy systems, we look at VO2, we look at lactate, we look at thermal regulation, we look at the heat that's generated by muscles when they contract, or the heat that is absorbed by the body from the environment, especially on a hot day in Las Vegas. And we study things like ergogenic aids, things that can help you perform work. Hopefully we don't use illegal ergogenic aids, performance enhancing drugs, PEDs. That's something that we want to avoid, of course. But we do look at these different factors that influence what muscles do, which generate forces. Those forces cause a displacement in time, change in position over some time period. And that's a movement. We put a name on it and we put a bunch of movements together and we have a performance. So how do muscles know what to do? Well, that's our nervous system. And I'm just being lazy and putting the central nervous system down here. The brain and reflexes tell the muscles what to do. The muscles generate forces. Those forces cause a segment to move, change in position over some time period. We put a name on that movement and that's a performance. And obviously there's feedback and feed forward information that we have that ultimately influences when a muscle contracts and how much that muscle contracts and how long that muscle contracts. So I have environment over here to the right of the central nervous system, and I have environment as really representing anything external to the human. Environment, clearly that sounds like something, heat related, temperature related, humidity related, maybe wind related. These things all influence human movement. And the brain has to detect these environmental issues and then tell the muscles to generate the right amount of force at the right amount of time for the right length of time to cause the right displacement in the right time period to cause the correct movement, and that movement being part of a performance. Now, environment can also be something a little different, and it can be psychological. So this could be perception, psychological perception of what's going on. I always use the example of, I can go in my backyard and shoot free throws, and I can get pretty good, maybe 8 out of 10. That's probably good for me to free throw shots. But if I'm at a basketball game and my ticket gets called and at halftime, I go down to the center of the court. We're down to the court, and they've got 18,000 people watching and seeing if I'm going to hit a free throw. That's a psychological pressure. What might happen is my brain will tell the muscles to generate the wrong amount of force or applied at the wrong amount of time or the wrong length of time. That incorrect force would cause an incorrect displacement in an incorrect time period. That incorrect displacement time period would be an incorrect movement. That incorrect movement would lead to lower performance or an error in performance. So this is, in essence, kinesiology in general, with looking at all different aspects. What you do as an undergraduate or even a graduate student, you're taking classes in a wide variety of areas. You take a class in motor learning, you take a class in motor behavior, you take a class in exercise physiology, in biomechanics, anatomical kinesiology. Your job, sports medicine, nutrition, your job as a student is to pull all those pieces of information from all those classes to understand human performance. So in each of our classes, we touch on this individually. And what happens is in some classes, we just start in one particular spot of this model and then focus on that. In this class that you're going to be taking, we're going to try to draw on several different areas to understand human performance, but you're going to focus in on applying information from one particular area. If you're in biomechanics of endurance performance, we're going to focus on using biomechanics to understand performance. If you're in physiology of endurance performance, we're going to focus on that physiology, what the muscles are doing, what the human's doing. Right. But and nevertheless, we're still going to be pulling from other areas. And it's important to remember that if we just try to become the world's best biomechanist or the world's best physiologist or the world best motor learning person, we're going to miss out. We need to draw on all these different areas to understand human performance. We need to understand motor control, how our brain controls our movements or coordinates our movements, motor coordination. We need to understand exercise physiology, how the muscle takes chemical energy and transforms that chemical energy to mechanical energy, a muscle generating force. We need to understand biomechanics. We need to understand kinetics, how forces cause movement, and kinematics, the descriptions of movements. We also need to broaden that to understand sports medicine, the injury aspect, how to minimize risk of injury, how to prevent injury, how to rehab from an injury. We also need to know things about motor learning. That is, we do a performance and we have to do it again and again and again. What is the best technique for learning that performance? What's the best technique so the brain can tell the muscles to generate the right amount of force to cause the right displacement in time period to cause the correct movement that's combined with other movements to generate a performance? We need all that. We also need sports psychology. We need to be able to understand how environmental things or things that we're thinking about ultimately influence performance. And we even need to know anatomical kinesiology, because this is a base in terms of describing human performance. So we need to have all these pieces to understand human performance. The class that you're in right now, we are going to be taking information that you've learned in other classes, primarily KIN 391, exercise physiology for physiology of endurance performance, and KIN 346 for biomechanics of endurance performance. We're going to take those pieces of information and apply it to understand how to improve human performance. But we can't lose sight that we need to understand all aspects of kinesiology to truly understand human performance. Okay, thank you.